Welcome to chapter 14, and in this chapter we're going to learn the present active participle and the ablative absolute. These are both syntactical constructions. So PrAP stands for present active participle. Pretty simple, okay? But what is a participle? Okay, well, before you handle the question of what is a participle, first think about the word ing in English. Now, there are two different ways that we use ing in English. Sometimes on the left over here, we use it as an adjective. She is running. At other times, on the right here, we use it as a noun. Running itself is something. So here we have squares as nouns and circles as adjectives. Okay, so in Latin, it would be like this. Curranes est. Now, you don't know what this form is, but take my word for it, it's an adjective of some sort. She is running. Over here, however, it would be currere est felix, to run, or running itself is happy. So there are two separate ways that ing in English comes into Latin. We have curranes, which is some weird adjective over there, and we have currere. Okay, so what are these? Well, curranes is a participle. It's a PrAP. It's a present active participle. Whereas currere over here is an infinitive. So you've already had infinitives. You translated it as to blank, but you could also just translate it as like blanking itself. So we're not concerned so much with the right side over here. But over there, that's what we're going to learn this chapter. Well, you could ask, what part of speech or what kind of thing is a participle? What is it? Well, it is a kind of adjective. Now, it's an adjective on the outside for how it relates to other words in the sentence. But on the inside, it's a verb. It's kind of like an adjective with verbal content inside of it. So primarily it's an adjective, but the inner meaning is just verbal-ish in nature, describing an action. So a participle then is an action buried into an adjective, while an infinitive is an action concretized as a noun. So both involve action, but one is adjectival and the other is a noun. So here's an example. She is rubra, red. That's an adjective, right? Rubra. She is angry, irata. That's an adjective, right? Et curranes. So do you believe that since rubra and irata were adjectives, that curranes is also an adjective? Yeah, it's used in exactly the same way as they are. All three of them are modifying ea over there, she, the pronoun she. So a participle here can be just one out of many adjectives all put into a string. And if you asked me what kind of participle is it, because we will learn like 5 or 6, well, it's a present active participle. We'll get participles in other tenses in chapter 21, and we'll get participles in other voices, passive, for instance. But this one is present and active. And that makes sense, because when you say blanking, it's usually right now, right? And it's usually them themselves doing it, not themselves having something done to them. So being present and active is just completely logical from the translation ing. Okay, so now here are the forms of a PrAP. You see in purple here, NS and NT will occur in every PrAP. So that's kind of like the sign of it. So here I have it compared on the left over there to a normal adjective here on the right. Notice they both have third declension endings, is, e, but the sign of the PrAP is before that ending, nt. So as far as the form is concerned, PrAPs are adjectives of only one termination. You don't see 3 separate pieces of paper up here on the top row. With no I stem. Now what's an I stem? Oh, okay, down here you see that third declension adjectives are a special kind of I stem. You may have forgotten about I stems. You can look down in the video description for the link to the I stems PowerPoint. But just for your information, we had this I stems PowerPoint And one kind of I stem was called a doubly troubly, and it is all third declension adjectives. And you see that they both would get an I in these two places rather than an E here and nothing down there. So feel free to go down to the video description and click the link to get this PowerPoint if you want to review this. So PrAPs have no I stems. You would think they would, wouldn't you? Because they are adjectives, aren't they? And we said that all third declension adjectives get this I here. But strangely, for what reason, I don't know why not, third declension gets an E as if it's a third declension noun. So technically it's an adjective for purposes of syntax and how it connects to things around it in the sentence. But its form looks like a noun. That's just bizarre. You would think it would be potenti, but it's not. It's potente. But I guess that's not too unusual because, remember, any Latin adjective can be kind of like a noun if you translate it as a blank one. So this would be a powerful one. And lastly, they have NS, NT ending. So what are PrAPs? They're adjectives of one termination with no I stems getting NS, NT tense signs. NS is only in the first one, except in neuters, where the neuter rule means that accusative must equal nominative. Everywhere else, it's going to be NT. So that the neuter plurals would, for instance, would be potentes and potenta. No I stems, not potentia, like quadruple neutral I stems. No I stems anywhere. All right. Okay, so how do we make PrAPs? Well, you start with the present stem. Now, there was a special rule to get the present stem, and it was really complex with the first two conjugations doing one thing and the last three conjugations doing something else. But I told you, just remember that the present stem is everything up to and including the distinctive vowel of each conjugation. So the vowels were long A, long E, nothing, short I, and long I. So after that distinctive vowel, add on the NS, and you'll be fine. Except in the last three conjugations, it just sounds really wimpy to be saying cadens, capitins, and aldines. So we don't say that. We add in a connecting vowel. Cadenes, capienes, audienes. So they all get this long E connecting vowel in between the present stem and the tense sign. So that's how you make it. But there's an even easier way yet. So just forget everything that I just said and just notice this. The first conjugation gets long ANS and everything else gets long ENS. So really, hey, this is pretty easy. Just ANS or long ENS. And don't forget the I in short I and long I verbs. All right, so let's do these. Present stem plus maybe a connecting vowel and then NS, NT. So first off, a calling one, wokans, a laughing one, redanes, a running one, curanes, or a hearing one, audienes. Or it could just be hearing, like the puer audienes, the boy hearing. All right, try these grammar questions to see how well you're keeping track of the technical terminology of this stuff. So stop the video and start the video again when you're ready to see the answers. And the answers? So notice number 5 here. What does participle mean? It is from the Latin word particeps, which means a participator. So it means that this adjective actually does stuff. It participates. It's not just a quality. Alrighty, so hopefully you got all these questions right. All right, now let's go to its origin and connections. Well, really connections. So when you use a participle in a sentence, you want to first think about the case number and gender of the noun that it's going to modify, and then pick the corresponding participial form from the same row and column in the third declension chart to make them match. So gemai lucentes, shining gems. Quella vocante, with the girl calling. Officia, winienta. coming offices or coming duties. Stellarum moventum, of the moving stars. Isn't this fun? It's great. Okay, and here's some examples. So we have this woman here pulling this man, and she is discadanes. She is a departing one, and she educit a non consentientem one. So the departing one leads out a not consenting one. So see how I was able to take the normal nouns of the sentence and replace them with participles? Because an adjective can function as a noun, just translated as a blank one. So the departing one leads out the non-cooperative one, you might say. Okay, so let's try some more of these. How would you translate this? Right, okay. A walking one moves one not arising, not getting up. All right, what about this one? Okay, yeah. A being awake one arouses from slumber a sleeping one. So maybe, I guess he was sleeping, and she's just pulling him up. Get up! So, and then remember, you can have a whole string of adjectives. So I could take just one of these in each column, and you could follow one of the lines. So I could say inhabitantes orentes educunt, or I could say all of them. The inhabitantes accusantes, so the inhabiting accusing ones, or you could say the accusing inhabitants, do what? They educunt, they lead out the what? The horrentes, metuentes, plorantes. What are they? The shuddering, fearing, weeping ones. Boy, these people aren't very friendly to visitors, are they? So here we have nominative PrAPs leading out accusative PrAPs. And we can even do more than that. We can have them leading them out to dative PrAPs. These could even be ablative, but you won't understand that until later in the video when we get ablative absolutes. So just assume these are datives. So unto who? Unto the mercatoribus expectantibus. Uh-oh. So the accusing inhabitants lead out the shuddering, fearing, weeping ones. Where? To the merchants expectantibus. What are they doing? Awaiting, to the awaiting merchants. They're selling them into like slavery or indentured servitude, or maybe just sending them home. Oh golly. Okay, so now you get the idea of how these PrAPs work in the sentence. So for the rest of this first half of the video, what we're going to do is we're just going to survey all the possible syntax structures in which we could now start using these PrAPs so that you'll be ready to use them in a whole bunch of varying different ways. And the first way we're going to start is with subjective infinitives. So remember this from way back in stage like 11 and 12. It is possible for me to be quiet. Okay, now what do you think I'm going to be able to replace here with a PrAP? Well, not possible, because that would be something like laughing it is for me to be quiet, which makes no sense. So we're not going to replace that one. Yeah, we're going to replace mihi. So now it becomes, it is possible for a fearing one to be silent. Ah, that's nice. That's pretty cool. Now we've got more ways to speak. And you could even add in both. So it is possible for me, fearing, to be silent. Mihi timenti, where we would draw a nice hard line to connect these two since they modify one another. Or in the plurals, it is possible for us to be silent. It is possible for us fearing ones to be silent. Alrighty, so that's the subjective infinitive. What about indirect statement? Marcus confesses the gladiator to win. Where could I insert a PrAP here? Okay, yeah, I could put it in for Marcus. We'll get that in a second, but the more ingenious place that I could insert it would be for the accusative subject. Marcus confesses a fighting one to win. Yeah, you're probably not going to win if you're not fighting. All right. Or we could even say, Marcus confesses the fighting gladiator to win. You know, this one is actually ambiguous because technically it could be Marcus confesses the gladiator to conquer the fighting one. You know, they might be two separate people, or they might be one person. So you don't really know from just looking at the page. You would only know if you could hear it spoken, and if you could hear a little pause in between gladiatorum and pugnantem, then you would know that they were two separate individuals. But otherwise, they'd probably be the same person modifying one another. Or we could even put it in for Marcus. So Marcus, watching, confesses the fighting ones to fall, or the fighting gladiators to fall. Oh boy. So see how interactive and vibrant you can create sentences now. You can just pack in these blanking words, untes, and suddenly it seems vivid like an active video or instant replay in sports. Alrighty, so now that we're learning this is something called relative time, and this is not going to be really significant until chapter 19 when you learn another tense. So humor me for a second while I go into other tenses which you have not learned yet. But this will give you an idea of how these PrAPs are really used. Okay, so this PrAP is going to function in what's called relative time. And what that means is that even though the PrAP is present, the action it's describing does not always occur in the present tense. Why not? Because of relative time. Really, the time of the action of being silent here cannot be known unless you first know the time of the main verb. So when will its action occur? Well, first you have to know the time of the main verb before you can figure out the time of the secondary verb. So in this case, the PrAP is present, which means that it occurs simultaneously with the main verb. So in this case, yes, it is occurring right now in the present tense. So yeah, in this case, there was no problem. But later on, when chapter 19, when we get the past tense, and chapter 20, when we get the future tense, then C lanes, you see, will now move to a different position on the timeline. Where did it move to? Well, it moved to the exact same place that the main verb moved. So wherever that main verb moves, a present secondary verb like C lanes will move right with it and be perfectly simultaneous with it. And you can hear this if you translate it correctly. If you say to yourself, silenting or being silent, I think, then you can kind of think to yourself, well, I guess I'm being silent right now, aren't I? Right. But if it was future tense, being silent, I will think, well, when is the being silent occurring? Is it occurring right now or off in the future? Right, off in the future. Why is that? I mean, being silent, I will think. Well, why is that? Well, because of relative time. That wherever the main verb is, the secondary verb's time is determined relative to that point. In the same way, being silent, I was thinking, if it were past tense. You were being silent back then, right? Being silent, I was thinking. So this idea of how the cloud of secondary verbs accompanies the main verb and moves to wherever that main verb goes is called the concept of relative time. Now, of course, this is not going to be a big thing in this chapter, so don't worry about it too much right now, but I just wanted to give it to you in advance to just kind of give you this little tip-off that a PrAP's action will not always be occurring here and now. It might be occurring whenever that main verb is occurring. But in this chapter, since all we know is the present tense, then yes, it always will be occurring now. Okay, if you didn't get that, then don't worry too much. You'll get it again in the future. But multiple times doesn't hurt. All right, so the second half of this video is this concept called Ablative Absolutes. And this is another syntactical construction which makes your sentence much more complex and vibrant and active with multiple things going on at the same time. So we have this in English, actually. It's when people say something like, things being what they are, blah, blah, blah. We asked for a compromise. Okay, so that first line there, things being what they are, is exactly the same as what an ablative absolute is in Latin. In this case, it's in English. Now, notice what word I have in red down here. With. This is characteristic of Latin, and this is actually more correct than the way we do it in English. In English, we leave off that with, so you lose track of the fact that this is a circumstantial side consideration. But in Latin, that with is kind of implicit in the fact that it's ablative words that are going to be used to make this ablative absolute, not stuff. But you'll get the hang of that in a second. If you didn't follow that, don't worry about it. So anyways, what we have here are two clauses. First the ablative absolute and then the main clause. Now, what is a clause again? In case you forgot, it's a part of a sentence that is anchored around a verb. So what are the two verbs then? Well, the ablative absolute has being, and the main clause has asked. So these are kind of like two separate things going on at the same time. All right, so how do we create these in Latin? Well, it's really simple. You just put two ablatives side by side. Now, they always have to be in one of three formulas. So they'll either be a noun plus a noun, or a noun plus an adjective, or now that we know this special kind of adjective called PrAP, they might also be a noun plus a PrAP. So these are the three formulas that an ablative absolute could have. But in each situation, what case are the two words in it? Well, look here. Long A, long A, long A, E, long A. They're all ablative, aren't they? Right. So later on, we'll get other kinds of participles like past participles, which you haven't learned, and passive participles, which you haven't learned. So there could be several other formulas later on, but for right now, these are the only three that you're going to get. Okay, so how would we translate this if we ran into this in Latin? Well, in each case, we say with the blank, blank. And if you need to, you can insert or supply the verb to be, but we'll see if we need that or not. So first one, Aemilia duce, with Emily, the leader. Now, does that make sense? Maybe, what would you need to supply to make it make more sense? With Aemilia being the leader. Very good. Yeah, that's better. Or you could say with Aemilia as the leader. That's an even more natural way to say it. Okay, what about the next one? Aemilia frigida, with Aemilia cold. Of course, you could supply being, with Aemilia being cold. Okay, and then in the last one, with Aemilia accipiente. Hopefully by now you can get this, with Aemilia accepting. Right. Okay, so in every case we've got with the blank blank. Now, caveat, beware. You will not always see parentheses. Parentheses are something that I put in to tip you off that this is an ablative absolute that I want you to write out. But in a real text, the only tip off is that you'll see two ablative words side by side. So from now on till kingdom come, if you see two ablative words side by side in a sentence, or even, they don't even always have to be side by side, I hate to say, because it could be like Aemilia pecuniam accipiente, with Aemilia accepting money. So it's just kind of like anytime you see two ablatives in the same thought, you better be suspicious and suspect that it might be an ablative absolute. These things are really common. Pull out any page from Caesar, like this one, for example, and you can see all the ablative absolutes in it. It's hugely common. Okay, so anytime you see two ablatives side by side, you better suspect that this is what's going on. Not always. And what pattern must the two ablatives follow always to even more confirm that as an ablative absolute? Right, they must be one of these three formulas. Noun plus either noun, adjective, or participle. Great. Okay. All right, so PrAP. Amelia accipiente surgunt. With Amelia accepting, they get up. Okay, I guess they ended a conversation or something. I don't know. And reached an agreement. Okay, and just as we had relative time with PrAPs, we're going to get the same thing with ablative absolutes, because you always have a verb here, implicitly at least, whether it's the PrAP itself or the implicit being, there's always the idea of a verb here. So wherever the main verb moves, the ablative absolute as the secondary verb will move with it. So with this one, you don't know yet what Surrect Savrant is, but just trust that it's past tense. So with Amelia accepting, they got up. Did the accepting occur now or back then? Yeah, back then. Even though it's present tense? Yeah, even though it's a present tense accipiente, it happens back then. Why? Because relative time means that present tense doesn't mean present. Present tense for a secondary verb means simultaneous with the main verb. Okay, great. And then with Amelia accepting, they were getting up, and then the future would be with Amelia accepting, they will get up. Great. Now, this is good enough for translating ablatives. You can stop there and skip the next 3 minutes, but I want to tell you about several alternate, more colloquial or more Englishy translations that you could use for the ablative absolute. These are not required, but they do make it seem more natural, and they are all implied implicitly, or could be implied, by an ablative absolute. And these 4 colloquial translations are when, while, since, and although. You could also have after if it were a past participle, but this isn't. It's a present participle, so after won't work in this chapter. You have to wait for chapter 21 to get after. Okay, so here's some other ways that you could translate these. While Amelia is accepting, they get up. Doesn't that mean the same thing as with Amelia accepting, they get up? Yeah, because whileness is implied in the parentheticalness of an ablative absolute. Same with when. What about since? Amelia accipiente, with Amelia accepting, they get up. Could that imply causality? Because Amelia is accepting, or since Amelia is accepting, they get up. Yeah, sometimes that's exactly what an ablative absolute implies. Not always. Sometimes it just implies another thing going on simultaneous. But sometimes it implies another thing going on simultaneous, which is causing the first. So yeah. Alternatively, it could be although. So Amelia accipiente, they get up. With Amelia accepting, although Amelia is accepting, they get up. Like Amelia was expecting them to stay, and so she even accepted what they wanted, but they got up anyways. They just wanted to get out of here. Okay, so that sometimes can also be implied by an ablative absolute. Like, with things being what they are, I don't care. What you're really saying is, although things are what they are, I don't care. Since and although are usually not appropriate then. You only can use these when you sense that causality or concessiveness is being implied. Conversely, the safest translation is when, because that will always work in all cases, and so that's why it's in bold right here. And these would also work with relative time. While Amelia was accepting, they got up. Or when Amelia was accepting, they got up. In this case, notice the verb that I supplied, be, switched to a past tense form, was. And it will also work with the future. Since Amelia is or will be accepting, they will get up. Something like that. Okay, so now you've been exposed to ablative absolutes. Now I want you to practice making them yourself. Of course, all you got to do is make 2 ablatives and make them agree in number and gender. So use this vocab down here And in each of these, pick 2 words that mean what is stated in English. With doctors as leaders. Now, what would you say for that? Well, medicis, because it's plural, and then leaders. How would you say ablative plural of leaders? Ducibus. So let's check that. Yep, medicis ducibus. Okay, let's try another one. Try to get it in the middle of the box. Okay, now what would this one be? With Caesar accepting. Caesare, and then some form of accept. And notice it's an ing, which means it has to be a noun, an adjective, or a PrAP? A PrAP. Okay, so how would you make an ablative PrAP out of accipit down here? Well, remember the rule? First conjugation gets long ANS, and everything else gets long ENS. Is accipit a long A verb? No, because it has ERE. So it's going to have some form of long E, because that's the only other alternative. So accipiente is probably what it's going to be. And yeah, Caesare accipiente. So there was your long E. Of course, it got shortened before NT, like it always does. So download this PowerPoint from the link in the video description if you haven't done that yet, and try these, as many as you need to try, until you feel confident that you can make all the various kinds of ablative absolutes using whatever words come up. And then also try it on the next slide, which is in black and white. And then once you feel confident that you can do it just with black and white, then start the video to keep on going. Okay, I'm going to do one in black and white. So, medicis accipientibus. Yeah, I got it right. Okay, of course I'd want to use the plural to match the plural of medicis. All right, so there are 2 more exercises that I want you to do to make sure that you've really got these PrAPs and ablative absolutes. So this is a story about a patronus and his clientes. Now, what is a patronus? Patronus est pater maior et dux civilis multorum, of many people, of many guys in this case. So he's the patron of many clientes. What is a client? Cliens est vir impecuniosus quem patronus sustinit, financially supports. So this is an institution in ancient Roman society. It's called the patron-client system. And the patron here would support lots of poor clients. Now, these might be just poor people, or in many cases, they were his freed slaves. So when you were freed as a slave, you didn't just go wandering off to do whatever you want. No, normally you stayed in the exact same town where you had been, where you knew everybody, and you continued doing whatever skill you had done as a slave, only now you were self-supporting. Well, not totally self-supporting, because that's really hard. So you wouldn't cast off your former master completely. No, this is a friendly system of double support. The clients support the patron in certain ways, and the patron supports the client in certain ways. And this happened all throughout Roman society. Even senators had patrons, and some emperors claimed that they were the patron of everybody. Nowadays, we would probably call this kind of corrupt. We would call it a good old boy system. But back then, this is what, to a large extent, held the fabric of society together. You know, you had really rich people and you had really poor people. And what prevented the poor people from revolting against the rich people? Well, it was that every rich person was supporting many poor people down low, assisting them and sharing the wealth a little bit and helping them out. And in exchange, they were supposed to be grateful to him. And one of the ways they would show their gratitude is by doing a certain little ceremony every morning called a salutatio, which we are going to learn about as we do this story. So we're going to use this vocab, so stop the video and I suggest that you recite all of these and make sure you know in your mind what it means, and that will enable you to understand what's going on in the story. So, die incipiente Gallus cantat. Now, every time what you see up here is going to be an ablative absolute. And in this case, it's a noun plus what? PrAP. So this is even more complex. So with something going on in the ablative absolute, something else happens. That's the formula of this story. Okay, so die incipiente Gallus cantat. Cock-a-doodle-doo! Would solet, as he's accustomed to do, every day, right? Gallo cantante, while that was happening, what else happens? Homines surgunt. You see all my men. Surgentes, ex lectis, in the morning. Ut solent, every morning. Uh-oh, what's going on here with this guy in the big house? Hominibus surgentibus, while that was going on, patronis tamen ad hoc non surgit. Now, notice I have tamen here. However, anytime you see however, guess what you should probably use to translate the ablative absolute? Right, although. Although the men are getting up. Because you could say when the men are getting up, while the men are getting up, since the men are getting up. But if you see tamen, it's probably best to translate it although the men are getting up. Of course, you could always use the literal translation, with the men getting up. But this is just if you wanted to use a colloquial, more vernacular translation. Although the men are getting up, yet, however, patronus ad hoc non surgit. Ut solet, every day he's late. Hominibus fessis domum patroni ad eunt. Ecce homines fessi. Okay, so to translate this one, you probably got to supply what word? Yeah, being. And domum down here, that's a place to which. Remember, domus humus et rus, and all small towns are weird in which they omit or leave off the odd that would normally be there. They just use accusative to denote place to which. So imagine there's an odd here. Okay, domum patroni ad eunt. Ut solent, every day. Hominibus expectantibus. Patronus ad hoc dormet. But it's okay. Why? Because servis patroni cibum pecuniamque adferentibus. So ecce duo servi cibum afferentes. See what they're carrying? Cibum et pecuniam. To all the clients, for all the clients. Which solent, every day. Clientes gaudent! Hooray! Hooray! Yuge pie! Mr. Redmond, did you just say that every day the clients get free food and free money? Yes. This is the big thing that the patron supplies to the clients every day. Now, it wouldn't be a lot. It would just be enough to hold you over. Maybe not even enough for you to survive. Maybe it's just like a snack. But it's something. So this was a huge tradition in Rome. Juvenal writes about this, that you would go to your patron's house in the morning, and the patron usually had a huge feast the night before. What do you think he's going to do with all the leftovers? Right. They're going to be packed into these little lunch boxes and handed out to all the clients that are waiting outside in the morning. It's a nice way to take old food and get a lot of goodwill from it. So this is kind of like McDonald's. Free food. Of course, it's not totally free because you're going to have to do something for your patron in exchange for this daily support that he is giving to you to help you out. Of course, though, this is the big attraction or incentive to get the clients to always be there in the morning, because who's going to pass up free breakfast and a little free spending money? Okay, so clientibus gaudentibus clamor patronum excitat. Oh! What finally happened for him? Now, how would you translate this? Think about the two actions here. Clients rejoicing and an uproar awakening the patron. Probably you're going to use since, yeah, because this is not just simultaneousness of the two actions, but causality, where this one causes that one. Yeah, okay. So since the clients are rejoicing, the uproar awakens the patron. Great. And yuge is like an expression of great joy. Hooray is basically what it means. Okay, and now they're all wakened up because, you've eaten and you've gotten your money. Oh, boy. So, patrono veniente, what happens? Patronum salutant. Ave, aveto, ave, o domine, oh, ave, patrone. So, after you had gotten your gifts in the morning, you would probably spend a little time standing in the patron's atrium, hearing if he has anything to say to you. And then the next order of business is he would usually go off to the forum, and you, his clients, would accompany him to show support for him, whether he's arguing a case, or whether he's trying to swing business deals, or whether he's maybe running for office. No matter what he's doing, you would be kind of there as his attendants, letting the world know what a great and prestigious guy he is. And you can see the things that they're saying here to let the whole world know that this is an awesome guy whom they are accompanying to town. I mean, this is power in Italian society if you've got friends, and a lot of them. Okay, so patrono ad forum iente, clientes quoque eunt. While this is happening, that happens. So this is the big thing that you as a little person could really give to your patron, and that's helping him out in the things he's doing, and especially in supporting his reputation. Alrighty. And then clientibus tantis. Now you probably want to supply a word here to make it make sense. Patronus clarissime ostenditur. Yuga pie! Yuga! Like every time he says something, everybody cheers. While every time his opponent says everything, you probably hear like boo. And so, I hope you now have a better understanding of how the patron-client system works in the Roman Empire. Okay, and in the final drill, you're going to use the exact same words as last time, so you probably don't even need to review these, but here they are in case you do. And in this, I just want you to write out the ablative absolutes in Latin. Each one is with the blank blank. So stop the video and start it when you're ready to see the answers. And the answers? In the second and third to last lines down here, you might be wondering to yourself, well, why are these two words different? And the answer is because one is an adjective. That's a noun plus adjective ablative absolute. And the other one is a noun. So in case you forgot, there was this other PowerPoint about I stems, and you can get this PowerPoint down in the video description. And these are kind of like weird exceptions to the third declension, where sometimes you get an I where normally you wouldn't. And one class of these I stems was called doubly troublies, which is all third declension adjectives. So they always get I in the ablative rather than E, which you would expect. And all that was kind of like an optional part of Chapter 9. So in this case, we have noun plus adjective. So in this case, the adjective is an I stem and gets I, whereas over here you have noun plus PrAP. So forte, a brave one, gets an E because it's a noun. It's a brave person or a brave thing or something like that. So that's why you have two seemingly identical words with different endings here. All right, so now at this point you have learned pretty much everything there is to know about PrAPs and ablative absolutes. So good luck, and I'm sure you can do the stories, and I'll see you next time. Well, later.